Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. Today, we are previewing the opening weekend, Omloop het Nieuwsblad and Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. Pretty exciting. This is what it's all about. The official start of the season. So, everybody loves Omloop. Kuurne is always sneakily really good. In fact, Kuurne last year was probably my favorite race of the season for reasons that will be reminisced on in the next episode. Anyways, yeah, everybody's pretty pumped for this, I would say. It seems like lots of people are, well, I don't know. It's the conventional normal season again, so that's good to hear. And there's one thing, though. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to my preview, which is basically just laying out the character of the season. And if you listen last year, it's going to be the same thing except a little bit tweaked, and I reread it so that it sounds better because last year I was work in progress. So anyways, this year I think it's better. So I think looking at the profile, Kuurne, it's got the same structure to it, but they're not using the typical cobble climbs. I didn't recognize any of the names. They might be going to Wallonia for it because I think the climb names start to come in French. But anyways, we'll have to see how that plays out. Maybe I'll have to tweak this description next year. But for now, it'll be good enough. So let's jump into that, and then I will give some heart picks afterwards. So here we go. Opening weekend, the official start to the cycling season. At last, it is the opening weekend not only for Belgium, but really the whole cycling world. In Belgium, last weekend, the long winter of cyclocross officially wrapped up with the final races, and now the road season can begin immediately. This last weekend of February is called opening weekend for the Belgians because by law, they are not allowed to hold a road race before Omloop het Nieuwsblad. After this weekend, any sort of racing from tiny village kermesses to prestigious monuments will take place on their soil on more days than not until the fall comes once again. But it is also the opening weekend for the rest of the cycling world, because now the season really starts. We have had many races already in the Southern Hemisphere, Middle East, and the tolerable parts of the Mediterranean. Riders have gotten their seasons started right. Some Australians and South Americans and Spaniards have already dazzled the home crowds, and many have gotten back into the swing of racing. But all of it, in reality, has been more of a preseason. Now is the time for the Classics men to come out to play, because on this opening of weekends is when the Spring Classics, the first major objectives of the season, begin. For the true fans, ideally, this weekend always has some brutally harsh weather. No matter how sadistic that sounds, it is the truth. There is something special about cozying up near a fire in a blanket on a Saturday afternoon to watch the finale of Omloop. For Americans like myself, sometimes I am tempted to just place the laptop near my bedside the night before, and come morning, I simply log onto the stream and begin watching live without even getting out of bed. This idea is not appealing for all the races on the calendar, certainly not in the Grand Tours, nor even in many of the other spring classics. But for this weekend, this opening weekend, the elements should be an essential element in the viewing. It should look so cold and rainy out on those wet Belgian roads and cobbles that for this weekend at least, we do not wish to be in the race or even on the roadside. Curled up under the covers is the ideal place to be watching while these tougher, hard men make their classics debut for the season. Yes, though opening weekend means road racing is back in Belgium, winter should not go down without a fight. Yes, let the Winter Warlocks give us and the racers a great shock to the system. Remind or teach the riders how to properly layer for a race. Let only the toughest men be in with a shout for the win. Heighten the stakes of the racing with the bad weather so that it will be a memorable victory with hundreds of war stories to tell afterwards. But enough sadistic musings on biblical weather. Let us properly lay out the weekend itself. On the last Saturday of February takes place the Belgian cobbled classic Omloop het Nieuwsblad. On the Sunday, it's twin cobbled classic Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne, or KBK. In recent decades, the races have markedly grown in prestige, though both have been around since the end of World War II. One reason for this increase in status must be the expansion of the early season calendar in January and February. With all the warm weather racing and training in the Southern Hemisphere, these Spring Classics riders are now already pinging on good form for this opening weekend. And why shouldn't they be? It takes a special breed of rider to win a cobbled classic, and there are only 8 real, traditional cobbled classics of high prestige. Thus, only 8 real opportunities to win. So, if 2 of the 8 are on this weekend, surely a large percentage of the riders want to make the most of the double chance. And the rest here to race want to refine their special cobbled classics legs for the later objectives. Another reason I speculate for the growth and prestige of this weekend is that Omloop het Nieuwsblad is the cobbled classic that is most akin to the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders itself. Yes, there are 8 cobbled classics that all the World Tour teams attend. Omloop het Nieuwsblad, Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne, E3, Ghent-Wevelgem, Dwars door Vlaanderen, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, Scheldeprijs, and Paris-Roubaix. The 2 biggest are, of course, the Ronde, Flanders, and Roubaix, for these 2 are monuments, the highest class a one-day race can be. The others are all classics, a class below the monuments. What makes a classic is an imprecise science and deserves a whole piece of its own. The races themselves have evolved over the years, but surely at this point, all of them are proper classics. Roubaix is its own special wild beast, and in recent years, I am not sure how much of a factor the cobbles have been in Scheldeprijs, for that race is always won by a pure sprinter. But those 2 aside, the rest of these races are similar. They are raced in generally the same area of Belgium, Flanders more specifically, and they reuse many of the same famous roads and climbs in the area. The Oude-Quermont, the Tyenberg, the Koppenberg, and the Paterberg, among others. Perhaps, if you have a studly knowledge of European geography and little knowledge of bike racing, you believe you know Flanders to be a flat area. Flanders comprises the top half of the country of Belgium, and it is true that Flanders is much flatter than Wallonia, Belgium's southern half, where the Ardennes Classics take place. But if you say Flanders is pancake flat, that is a misstep and reveals you have never watched a Flandrian cobbled classic. Sure, it is difficult to find many hills longer than 1 kilometer in length, and the heights they reach are peanuts compared to the mountain passes of Colombia, but despite their short length, Flanders has some very steep climbs. When I say steep, I speak of leg-breaking and energy-sapping climbs over 10% in gradient with difficult max gradients well over 15 or even 20%, and the worst part? These climbs are on cobbles. Cobbles so bouncy and slick, on many of them, even on the 20% sections, you must ride seated in order to have any traction for your back wheel not to slide out. These cobbled sections, and many of the Flemish lanes, are all notoriously narrow, and thus positioning is all important. You must be at the front. You must not be caught behind a less competent rider who cannot ride the steepest and most difficult parts. It is not uncommon for many pro riders to lose all momentum from the difficulty or just because too many riders are bunched up in front of them, and thus they put one foot down or even crash. Yes, many of these climbs are so steep that if you lose momentum or stop, there's no starting up again until you walk to the top. So, in addition to the climbs being brutal themselves, the kilometers leading up to the climbs themselves are ferocious fighting affairs as all the teams want to get their top riders to the front for the most famous climbs. To be in a good position throughout the race does not mean you will have success, but surely it is a prerequisite for any success at all. On these famous climbs, Occasionally you shall hear them referred to as bergs. The cream of the crop rises to the top, and groups of leaders and chasers form. A group of 15 riders, containing 2 or 3 of the race favorites, find separation on one of these climbs early in the race. Because one of the riders in the 16th or 20th position crashes on the climb, this causes the rest of the peloton to halt and maneuver around the fallen rider. All of a sudden, there's a group of 15 that has a minute gap, and the peloton spends the rest of the race chasing them down. Yes, these cobbled races often produce the most dynamic racing of the year. It is a true test of strategy amidst unprecedented levels of uncontrollable adversity. And then, in the finales of these classics, after the pelotons and chasing groups have been whittled down to just the top men, these great ones go head to head, testing and attacking each other on these most ferocious bergs of Flanders, proving who is not only the strongest rider, but also who has the best combination of strength and cunning. Yes, these are the races we look forward to most in the spring. They are chaos on wheels. And yet, every time, someone must rise above to win. Thus, Omloop Het Nieuwsblad is a big objective, for it is sometimes even considered a mini Tour of Flanders. The real Tour of Flanders, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, is 250 kilometers. One of the features that usually separates a monument from the classics is its length, whereas Omloop is only about 200 kilometers. But where the steep little bergs and cobbles come, it is more intense here at Omloop than at Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne the next day. At KBK, the biggest climbs and cobbles come mid-race, and there is a flat finale. Thus, potentially, the sprinters have a shot. This is not the case at Omloop Het Nieuwsblad or the Tour of Flanders. These races are too hard for a sprinter to win. Over the course of the race, the field gets so whittled down, you must be one of the strongest men over the steep climbs to have a shot. Yes, some of the men who are best at this actually can turn out to be fine sprinters, and most have some sort of element of speed, but they truly are their own special kind of rider to be able to fly up steep little cobbled climbs like these, and yet also endure all the grueling and harrowing challenges across the whole route. To win a race like Omloop, you need to have great endurance, Beowulfian power, tactical prowess, superb bike handling skills, and speed in case the race ends in a 3 or 4 man sprint. Yes, perhaps the crosswinds do not often ravage Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. That is traditionally the job of the harsh cold weather and many climbs themselves. In recent years, Omloop has even taken over the old traditional Flanders finale, hitting the riders with last tests up the Muur van Gerensbergen and the final stinging Bosberg after that. Yes, the Muur van Gerensbergen is the most famous of Flanders climbs, often referred to simply as the Muur. It is the Muur that scales up to the iconic chapel. Perhaps you know it as the Kapelmuur. And yes, it was such a controversial decision when the Tour of Flanders decided to remove it from the finale of its route. But now it has a new home at the mini Tour of Flanders, Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. Yes, to win at Omloop surely means you are on flying form and your season is already made. The only question or danger that arises, are you flying high too early? Never have Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and the Tour of Flanders both been won by the same rider in the same season. Though these races are only 6 weeks apart, traditional wisdom says that is too long to hold a peak of highest form. Thus, some of the highest favorites for the monuments of Flanders and Roubaix skip this opening weekend to keep their proverbial powder dry. But luckily, others do not, and Omloop always proves to be a good race and has a worthy champion. Whoever wins Omloop will be in the discussion of favorites for the rest of the cobbled classics. Meanwhile, the next day is Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. No, nowadays it does not quite live up to its name. Though it usually starts and finishes around Kuurne, it will at best only make it to the outskirts of Brussels midway through the race. But it is of little matter. What matters is what cobbled climbs it too shall hit. The answer is not as many as Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. Historically, this race could often end in a bunch sprint of 100 riders won by a pure sprinter who had the endurance or strong team support to make it over the cobbled climbs and then mop up any strong classics men in the breakaways. Perhaps the reality of this race can make it seem or feel a bit flat, pun intended, compared to the mini Tour of Flanders the day before at Omloop. Yes, in some years that is the case, and that is the way it goes. But that does not mean it is bad viewing nor the end of the world. And with developments to the early season calendar, this is becoming a reality less and less often. In recent years, the Middle Eastern races are attracting the strongest lineups of pure sprinters at this time of year. Why would some of the pure sprinters want to go to KBK to get their teeth kicked in over some of the cobbled climbs while freezing their fingers into black frostbitten oblivion when there are warm, flat desert races in the Middle East begging to be won by them? Yes, it is an easy choice for the top sprinters to forego their lesser chance of winning KBK for ample opportunities of sprint after sprint in the Middle East. Thus, with the absence of most of the headline sprinters, very few teams try to hold the race together for the sprint. And yes, luckily, if few teams actively try to hold the race together, it will not be held together over a challenging course like this. Yes, in recent years, this race has come down to a sprint of less than 10 men. Even in recent years, multiple solo escapists have found success holding off a reduced peloton behind. Do not be angry with me if the race does end in a bunch sprint, but with the headline sprinters in the Middle East and still the respectably difficult route of cobbles and climbs, there is a good shot it will not all come back together in the finale. And thus, opening weekend has been described. Hopefully you now better understand what is coming up, what you might be getting yourself into. All that is left now is to place our bets, make our picks of doom sure to go wrong, and then finally, and of course, watch the races themselves. And yes, remember, for this weekend at least, we all root for bad weather, for that really is an essential in a proper Belgian opening weekend. All right, so that was the character of it, the opening weekend. I'm up in Nieuwsblad, mini Tour of Flanders, Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. Kind of a wild card one, could end in a sprint, could be somebody solo getting away. Always surprisingly good based on there not being any significant climbing for the last 40K. so anyways, we all know I'm not good at predicting anything. It's just a waste of time and just makes me look dumb. Plus, I'm starting to not want to be good at predicting anything. So I'm just going to run through, looking at the start list, I'm just going to go through some heart storylines, and then I'll make, I'll make a pick of who I'd want to win most and maybe has some sort of shot. Okay. So just running through first things first. Unfortunately, the weather looks like it's going to be beautiful. 30s, 40s, 50s Fahrenheit, that is, and sunny. So this is going to be lame. Potentially a lame weekend. The weather could brighten the results, and that wouldn't be good. All right, so anyways, looking down it though. Anyone from the Wolf Pack looks cool. Anybody from Quick-Step would be great to see win, especially Yves Lampaert. He's yet to take a top-tier Flandrian Classic. I know he's won Dwars and he's won Depana, but those are both midweek wins. I want to see him win something on a weekend in the big show, the big time, right? It'll be interesting to see the Jumbo Classic squad. I'm not going to root against Wout van Aert in this one, but I don't really want to see him win it because then fate's against him that he could win Flanders later, and he better win a cobbled monument this year because he shafted the Cyclocross Worlds, which was unacceptable. Then again, this is Wout's first race back, so I don't think he even wants to win it. But if he does, that would probably indicate some insanely high form. So, been loving Intermarché. Good start to the season. They're becoming one of my underdog teams. And would love to see Van Avermaet help Oliver Dawson win, take his first massive Classics win. That'd be great. It's been a way too long time coming. Colbrelli leading Bahrain. So I was actually thinking about this. So if it's going to be good weather, this might be a better shot for him than Kuurne the next day. But we'll see. Moscon leading Astana. That could be interesting. Why is Cocard here at all? Then again, same deal as Colbrelli. He's been on pretty good form, so he might actually be able to get over these climbs. And then if it's a reduced bunch sprint like it was last year at Omlop, which is crazy, then maybe, he could win it. So we'll see. Might have more luck at KBK, but I guess actually, now that I look at it, why not try your luck at Omlop? Why not? All right. Could be cool to see Pidcock start off his season with a win, or Ethan Hayter. And I love Jonathan Navarez since his KBK ride last year with a certain Renaissance madman. But I don't think any of them are in shape yet, especially Pidcock. He's aiming for the Giro, so I mean that's way out in May. There's no way he's gonna be ready for that. Let's see. Gaviria, looks like he's stuck here because he was supposed to go to UAE, but now he's going to this instead because the COVID lockdowns. I guess they had to switch schedules, so he has to be here. This probably is a bridge too far for him, I would say. All right. Total Energy. How do they play this year? They got Sagan, Turgis, Oss, Eddie Boss, and Lawless in that lineup. That's a very, very solid team. Sagan did not look in shape at the Tour de Alps Maritime or whatever it is. So maybe he could play, he probably will play regardless of his shape this season. He'll play the kind of the Boonen role where everybody marks him and then his teammates are kind of free to fly up the road. I mean, that's what Terpstra would do with Boonen all the time. Now, notable, Terpstra's on for KBK. He's not on this Omlop start list, and I don't really know why, but whatever. I thought that one would be better for him, but I don't know. Actually, maybe not, because he's kind of a bigger guy, so he could probably do the TT aspect of KBK. Anyways, finally, I love anyone on UnoX. All right, so we're talking underdog teams. We're talking, they're the guys. They punch above their weight. They ride courageously, and their jersey is really, really growing on me. I'm thinking about just naming them the salmon-eating Vikings to go along with the Quick-Step Wolfpack and the Bora Band of Brothers. All right. Anyways, final heart pick. Trying to be somewhat realistic. I'm just going to take anyone from Total Energy to win this. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see happen. Don't know what will happen. Don't know if it'll happen, but that's what I want to see happen. All right, on to Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. Jakobsen's here. Got to be the favorite, unless one of his own teammates goes up the road. The other got to be favorite. It's got to be Caleb Ewan because he's been climbing very decently, and lots of other sprint teams here to hold it together. I guess Lotto Soudal is also one that supposedly seems to be trying to score points at every single race possible, even if they're smaller. So I don't know. Every win kind of goes a long way because I guess they are actually thinking about relegation, I guess, all the way at the end of the season. But anyways, Kristoff here, if it's a really bad weather day, he's got to be in there with a shout, but it's supposed to be sunny, so probably count him out. Cobrelli, yeah, he's probably got a better chance actually at Omlop compared to the pure sprinters that are here today, and the pure sprinters that aren't so pure anymore because they can actually climb pretty well, right? Cocard's here, but yeah, I think he's also Omlop's going to actually be the better chance. Now as I say this out loud, I wrote down something, but then I'm totally going against it. Yeah, Omlop, if it's nice weather, that race isn't actually as hard as we think because it's just the bad weather that really ruins it. But it's supposed to be nice. Stefan Kung in here, maybe he could TT away to the finish. He could be, we saw Stuyven do that a couple times. Who else did? Oh, Vanderpool almost did it with. Oh shoot, I'm spoiling the last year. All right, well, anyways, Vanderpool almost did it with, Navarez and then whoever else was in that crew. Okay, and then Nizzolo, Israel Premier Tech. That could be an outside shout. Gaviria here in the sprint. Big surprise against all the competition. Maybe. Tim Merlier is really fast, and Alpesen's on fire right now. And he's probably, I don't know, maybe his testosterone's boosting when he sees Jasper Philipsen stepping up to such a new level this year in UAE. Who knows? We'll see. And then can Sagan pull something out here again? Because he's won this before. I don't think Sagan's ever won Omlop, but he's won Kuurne, I believe it twice, at least once, but twice. And Terpstra is in the lineup for this day. So, heart pick. This is real heart of hearts here. Gaviria finds a way. Don't know how, but that would be cool to see if he could. That'd be really great. All right, with that, I think that's all I have to say for this. So, Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. This is more for the description, but I can update it with this part for the year. So hopefully that was not a waste of 8 minutes of previewing this edition. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the description. Thanks for listening to everything. Follow, subscribe to the podcast, follow on YouTube, leave comments, 5-star reviews. Thanks for listening, everybody. Vive le cyclisme.